We closed the month of November with our third and final superhero review of the month, as today we're looking at My Super Ex-Girlfriend, which was released in 2006. My Super Ex-Girlfriend is a comedy superhero film directed by Ivan Reitman, who has also directed films including Stripes, Ghostbusters, Kindergarten Cop, and Dave, and has served on a producer's films such as Animal House, Space Jam, and Beethoven. The film centers around a man named Matt who falls in love with a girl named Jenny. Matt thinks that Jenny is just some kind of neurotic, somewhat shy girl, but in reality, she's actually a superheroine named G-Girl. And once Matt learns of that fact, his life starts to turn just a little bit upside down. The film had a pretty all-star cast including Uma Thurman, Luke Wilson, Anna Faris, Eddie Izzard, and Rainn Wilson. It grossed $61 million at the box office on a $30 million budget, and got mixed reviews from critics. This is also the second film on the channel that we've done that has Uma Thurman and Eddie Izzard together, as they were also in that awful American adaptation of The Avengers. But this film is a lot better than that film, but just how good is it? Well, we're gonna find out right now as we review My Super Ex-Girlfriend, released in 2006. So our film begins in New York City with an armed robbery in progress, because it's a film in New York City. The robbers don't get away for long though, as they're quickly stopped by the town's resident superheroine, G-Girl. We then go to a subway train where we meet our main character, the shy and unsure of himself Matt, and his best friend Vaughn, who is a sex-crazed pervert. Vaughn convinces Matt to go hit on this girl with glasses, who interestingly enough looks a lot like G-Girl, just with red hair. As he's trying to talk her up, however, she gets her purse snatched, and Matt chases the purse snatcher out of the subway until he retrieves it. He gives the girl her purse back and she introduces herself to him as Jenny, and as a thank you for getting the purse back, she agrees to have dinner with him later that night. To learn a little bit more about Matt, he works as an architect along with Vaughn and his co-worker Hannah, who he seems to have a massive crush on. Matt then goes on that date with Jenny, and it seems to be going pretty well until Jenny hears something with her super hearing. She takes off to the bathroom when in reality she actually transforms into G-Girl and puts out a burning building. Despite her weird habits and her being slightly neurotic, maybe a little bit more than slightly, they continue to date, and one night Matt actually invites her over to his apartment. And as they're making out, they're being spied on by a bird camera being controlled by Eddie Izzard. Matt and Jenny then have sex for the first time, and she breaks his bed, along with possibly his dick. The next day, Matt is kidnapped by Eddie Izzard, who's revealed to be Professor Bedlam, G-Girl's arch nemesis. He asks Matt to tell him all about his new girlfriend Jenny, to which he refuses, so Professor Bedlam does the only logical thing he can, and hangs him from the Statue of Liberty. G-Girl then saves Matt while Professor Bedlam breaks into her apartment and steals the hair out of her hairbrush, which is fucking weird, but okay. The next day, Matt and Jenny are out for a walk, and Jenny saves the little girl from being hit by a car. She herself is then hit by a car, and Matt is astonished when she's not injured. She then decides to reveal the secret to Matt that she's actually G-Girl, and makes Matt swear not to tell anyone. Matt then asks Jenny about Professor Bedlam, and she reveals their origins. Professor Bedlam used to be called Barry Lambert, and they grew up and went to school together, where they bonded because they were both considered nerds. Then one night, as they were about to have sex for the first time, they saw a meteorite crash, which Jenny touched, giving her her powers of G-Girl. Afterwards, she became way cooler and started to drift apart from Barry, so he swore revenge on her. After that story, Matt wants to fulfill a fantasy of having sex with G-Girl, so she takes him into the sky and they have a dropping out of the sky sex, which I imagine he did not enjoy that much. Meanwhile, back at Professor Bedlam's place, we find out why he jacked G-Girl's hair. He's found a way to cut it by using some sort of meteorite to disarm its power. Sometime later, Matt is out on a job site with Hannah, and then Jenny shows up out of nowhere and seems to be just a little bit jealous of Hannah. Matt and Jenny then plan a double date with Hannah and her boyfriend, who doesn't bother to show up. Jenny is super jealous of Hannah, and then they hear on the news that there's a missile heading towards New York City, and Jenny doesn't seem to want to do anything about it. After some coercing from Matt, however, though, she does decide to get rid of the missile. They then fight on the way home, where Jenny breaks his car window and reveals that she's only doing this because she's in love with him. Matt then decides that this is too crazy for him and breaks up with her. That may have been a poor choice, however, though, as Jenny then promises to make his life a living hell. And she goes about that first by sending his car to fucking space. And then the day after that, when Matt has a big business meeting with some partners from China, Jenny interrupts and strips him of his clothes, which gets him fired from his job. Professor Bedlam then shows up at Matt's apartment and tells him that he's found a way to neutralize Jenny of her powers without killing her. Matt doesn't really want to go along with it, but Professor Bedlam gives him his card just in case. He then gets a call from Hannah, who's really upset, and he races to her apartment just to find out that she's been cheated on by her boyfriend. And after Hannah admits that she always had a better time with Matt than she did with her boyfriend, Matt finally spills the beans that he's madly in love with her. Looks like she feels about the same way, and they have sex. The next morning, they wake up to G-Girl outside the window, who is holding a shark, and Jesus Christ, she throws the shark for the window. The shark almost bites Matt's dick off before he evades it and causes it to jump out another window. He then tells Hannah that she's in danger as long as she's associated with him and that she needs to get out of town. And since he's about out of options, Matt decides to go to Professor Bedlam's house to take him up on that offer. While he's waiting for Bedlam, he sees the professor has an entire shrine dedicated to Jenny, which totally isn't weird. Bedlam reveals the asteroid to Matt, and basically all Matt has to do is lure her towards it, and the asteroid will suck up all her power. Matt then goes to Jenny's work and apologizes and says that he's madly in love with her and wants to get back together, so she agrees to go to his apartment that night for dinner. But she's not the only girl who showed up, as Hannah's here too. And Matt's not the only guy who showed up, as Vaughn is here too with Yankees playoff tickets. Fucking score. Hannah and Jenny then begin to fight, and Hannah rips off Jenny's wig to reveal that she's G-Girl. Matt then has Vaughn open the box, and Jenny gets stripped of her powers. Professor Bedlam then attempts to double-cross Matt, however, and as they're fighting, Jenny and Hannah both crawl towards the asteroid, and it explodes, blowing them both off the roof. Jenny then re-emerges once again as G-Girl, and she's about to kill Matt until Hannah re-emerges, now with red hair and superpowers of her own. They then have themselves a big old superheroine fight until they end up in a fashion show where Matt's able to calm Jenny down. Matt says that what he and Jenny had was never love, but there is someone who does love her. Good old Professor Bedlam, who has that totally not weird shrine to her in his house. And Barry reveals to Jenny that he does indeed love her, and they finally agree to be together, while Matt finally gets to be together with Hannah. And everything's all good now. Hannah breaks Matt's bed again while they have super sex, and Jenny's able to get him his car back, or at least what's left of it. And the two new couples are planning on going on their first double date until Jenny hears G-Girl stuff calling in terms of a jet going down. But remember, Hannah's super too, so now they can be a super duo, and they fly off into the distance to help fight crime while their boyfriends decide to go get a beer. Well, I'm proud to say, ladies and gentlemen, but after Uma Thurman and Eddie Izzard made that terrible Avengers film together, they actually pieced together a pretty solid and underrated superhero film here. And that's the best way I think to possibly describe this film, to be honest. A really solid film. It's not the type of film that's going to win any awards or anything, but it's got a lot of rewatch value, and I could see myself seeing it again. I think it's incredibly fitting, too, that Uma Thurman and Anna Faris would be in a film together, considering they've both done a very wide variety of incredibly weird films. Like, not by that I mean, like, it's very weird the amount of different films they've been in. Like, seriously, go look at Thurman or Faris's film library. You'll be like, wow, that is a very random assortment of things. And seeing Rainn Wilson as an overconfident sex fiend is pretty funny, considering his role in The Office. And of course, shout out to Luke Wilson. I know most people will know him as just, Owen Wilson's brother, but he's had a pretty underrated career himself. I think the character of G-Girl was very interesting as well. I mean, she might have had borderline personality disorder. To be honest, she was a hero, but also kind of a villain. It was a very interesting character, and something that maybe in, I don't know, more of a film series, maybe something else. I'd like to see that type of character maybe expanded on a little bit more, because I feel like there's so much more you can do with a borderline personality disorder hero. But in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, this film was nothing to scream for the skies about, but something that I think I could see myself watching multiple times and still loving, and personally, I would recommend checking it out. But that's going to do it for my review of my Super Ex-Girlfriend. Thank you again, Yoshi, for using your channel points on this. I appreciate it. That's going to do it for me today. Thank you guys for watching. watching. If you liked it, be sure to like it. If you didn't like it, don't. If you want to follow any of my social media links, they're on the description down below. Thank you to all my Patrons for supporting me and my channels. I appreciate you guys. With all that being said, though, my name is Noah Taft. This has been my review of my Super Ex-Girlfriend, released in 2006, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.